In 1772, in Philadelphia, there was a man named Charles Bathos, who was a notary, who died. Probably a fairly wealthy man. And like they do today, they gathered up all of his belongings, his possessions, and put them up for sale. He probably didn't have any children and didn't need these things anymore. So along with the candlesticks and the bathtub and his paintings and other things, they sold off the people that he owned, too, the human beings. And one of them was a young man named Will, who apparently caught the eye of Benjamin Chew. Benjamin Chew was the Attorney General of Pennsylvania and a very wealthy man. And it appears that Will was probably highly trained in the skills needed for a wealthy household. How to take care of expensive clothing, how to behave properly in the right company. Very specialized skills. And so Benjamin Chew decided that he was going to buy Will, which he did. And he paid £82, which was a fair amount of money. And he actually paid for Will with £32 in cash and a trade-in of another enslaved young man who wasn't worth as much. And I can only wonder what was the path and the life of the other young man who was traded in because he wasn't worthy. At any rate, Will came and lived in the townhouse of Benjamin Chew in Philadelphia. And in doing so, he certainly dressed very well, because he would have been present with Benjamin Chew all the time. He did chores for him. He probably slept in the townhouse because he would have needed to be available if Benjamin Chew needed anything in the middle of the night. He may have eaten well, but we don't know for sure. And in a lot of respects, he probably did live better than many of the poor whites and blacks in Philadelphia, where there was a great deal of poverty. And so people would have said that he was probably doing fairly well. Now, in 1777, the British came to Philadelphia. This was during the Revolution, and the general of the British forces decided that he wanted to lodge the British Army in Philadelphia for shelter over the winter. And in August of 1777, as the British were coming close to the city, all of the old officers of the province of Pennsylvania were arrested and sent out of the area to make sure that they didn't collude with the British. This included Benjamin Chew. So he was picked up, taken away from his family, and sent off to Union Forge in New Jersey. So he was out of touch for all of this. But then shortly thereafter, the British come in and they take over the city. In fact, the city, which had 3,000 people in it, now had 50,000 people in it. And in fact, food disappeared. Everything was taken apart for its wood, for fuel. I mean, the place was a disaster. But it was better than it was before, for the British at least. And another thing happened while they were there. The British made an offer to all of the African Americans in Philadelphia that said that if you cross the lines and fight for us, we will give you freedom and we will give you land. And this was an interesting, exciting offer, but not as good as it might sound on the face of things, because there were risks involved. One of them is what happens if the British don't win, which we know they didn't. You could be stuck somewhere and in deep trouble as a traitor for treason. In fact, what if the British simply move from Philadelphia and they don't take you with them? There were thousands of loyalists in Philadelphia, and how could you be sure that the British would take all of these empty mouths along with them when they had to move along and make war? So this was a really dicey sort of thing to think about. But African Americans didn't think twice about it. Thousands of people crossed the lines because a chance at freedom was better than anything. Now, this is something that the Jews, in their comfort, in their home, with their fine clothes, never understood. Nobody ever made any sense why somebody would leave the warm house, the whatever. They never even understood that what was a slave. And in fact, Benjamin Chew wrote a letter to Benjamin Chew Jr., the son, wrote a letter to his father at Union Forge telling him that Will had run away. And in it, he explained how the Chews thought about this and how they would never understand why Will left and how grumpy they were that Will would be so ungrateful for having left them. And I'll read you just a sentence from the letter. It says, "Will, I hear, has made his escape to some other country, but the hardship he must experience from a different way of living than that in your employ will sufficiently punish his ingratitude."